Doesn't make good TV or a good game. But here's some things I think you can take away. For the first, second, and third rule of monopoly and real estate, location. Welcome to the Dirt Podcasts. I'm Miles Solomon. Every week, I share my perspective on commercial real estate and the business of trading dirt. Let's get into it.
Nothing in this podcast is legal, tax, or investment advice. It's for entertainment only, loosely inspired by real estate, and any resemblance to actual people, deals, or outcomes is accidental or aggressively fictionalized. Talk to your attorney, CPA, and advisors before acting on anything you hear.
I played Monopoly for the first time in a long time last week. I had my parents and my girlfriend, and one of the first things that my buddy told my girlfriend when we started dating is to never play Monopoly with me. I think he was saying that after a liquor-fueled night of Monopoly like 4 years ago that almost ended in fistfights. And I think it was probably good advice. And he said, especially don't let him be the banker because he'll try to start like creating complicated or predatory loan structures and doing things that are not within the Monopoly rules. Well, we played, and I was the banker, and it was fucking awesome. Besides being fun, there's some good lessons in Monopoly you can use in real estate. Mostly I like Monopoly because it's like the opposite of real life real estate. Like social media and HGTV and all these people selling courses have you thinking you can get those big flips, those big rewards, that you just need to hit one deal and that'll be the one. If you can just get all the colors, you'll be able to build a hotel and hit it rich. Like real life doesn't really work like that, obviously. Moderating your risk, like hedging exposure, basically doing the opposite of having a monopoly, hedging your exposure and your downside, buying what one of my clients calls a defendable basis, which is basically making sure that whatever you're buying is below replacement costs or below what your competitors could potentially build for. So, for example, if you're buying land to build a building somewhere and that piece of land is surrounded by other pieces of land with similar zoning, that's a risk because every X amount of years, new construction can happen around you. Perhaps at bigger economies of scale, they can offer lower prices. So, defendable basis is not a very sexy concept for HGTV or for a board game. Repeatable cash flow. It's all boring. It doesn't make good TV or a good game. But here's some things I think you can take away. For the first, second, and third rule of monopoly and real estate, location. A mentor of mine, Greg Gill, from our South Bay Lee and Associates office, a guy that has always shared amazing advice with me, which I always try to write down when someone tells me. I write two things down. One, I'll always write down if someone gives me a really memorable quote. I write that down on my phone on my quotes list. And then the other thing I always write down is when someone gives me a movie or a book recommendation, and I'll put that on my list, and I'll check back whenever I need a new book or a new movie. I'll put their name next to it, and then after I'm done watching it or reading it, usually I drop them a note, let them know if I liked it or not or whatever. But one of the things Mr. Gill said is you only make money on a marginal asset if you monetize it immediately. I'm going to say that again. You only make money on a marginal asset if you monetize it immediately. Meaning that if you buy the brown or the blues, you got to flip out of it quickly. Like the browns are really just marginal assets in Monopoly because the cash flow is just nothing. It's like $6. And even when you build hotels and stuff, it's, I don't know, $20 or $30. And the blues are also marginal, even though everybody wants to be on Park Avenue, because even though they're A+ locations, they're also the most expensive by like a large large margin, and the cash flow versus like your basis in buying it, your replacement cost is like very, yeah, it's the numbers don't work. The number of times that people will land on Park Avenue, the last two, or Park or the other one, the last two pieces in the board game, it doesn't justify spending uh, all your money to buy those. So sorry to my lovely girlfriend who spent and traded everything to own those two. Um, so, you know, if you buy something marginal because you're just getting a great deal, and I love great deals. I love Harbor Freight. I love their garage sales. I love, I've talked about it before. It is hard to pass up a great deal, but it's one thing buying a used tractor on Facebook Marketplace, and it's another to buy, a multi-million-dollar asset because it's a great deal. If you buy something marginal because you're getting a great deal, you need to flip out of it quickly. You need to have a plan. You need to trade for something that you want, sell it to somebody who needs it to complete their own monopoly. Otherwise, you're stuck with $6 rents and a shitty property and headaches. So, besides location, I think second rule is that cash flow is king. Anybody who owns a business will tell you that. You could have the best margin in the world, but if it takes 120 days for your customers to pay, or you always have to chase your rent every month, eventually that'll catch up. I know clients that are in extremely high margin businesses, but as soon as they have a problem with the supplier, they have somebody, I've had clients where a single client owes, or a single customer owes them millions of dollars. And as soon as those guys start having problems or go belly up, they're in serious shit because they no longer, that margin doesn't matter when you don't receive it. I think on the opposite end of that spectrum is also there's low margin businesses, um, razor thin margins that also have a hard time with cash flow. So cash flows, it's more of an intuitive idea. I think you can talk about it, but until you've actually lived what real cash flow means, it's hard to truly appreciate and understand what having good cash flow means. It means that you have a healthy window between the money that's going out and the money that's coming in, and that you're cushioned. So most of the really successful real estate people that I know or that are my clients, um, they built their empire through a business typically. So they own really great real estate through their business. Their business pays their mortgage, and eventually their real estate's worth more than their business. That's not really accessible tool for most people. It's certainly not accessible for me. I don't have a great business that I run outside of brokerage. So I don't have a business that can go and buy real estate and pay for the mortgage and do all that. So you have to be really careful about cash flow, um, because you're always one bad luck situation from going bankrupt. You owe a loan or a mortgage payment on the first, but your tenants pay 30 days late. That's like landing on a hotel where $600 in rent is due, but your mortgage to the hilt. I have some tenants that they're late payers, but they always pay. But they always pay 15 days late, 20 days late, and which is fine as long as you're aware of what kind of tenant they are and or what kind of customer you're dealing with, and you build that into your pricing and everything else. So if they wanted to make monopoly really boring, they should add interest payments on mortgage properties. I had like 10 mortgage properties, but it's a fixed amount to buy it back. So you flip over your card, the bank gives you $120. Whenever you want to pay it back, you pay the bank $145. So maybe your interest rate is 14% if you pay it back in a turn or two. But if you keep it mortgage for most of the game and you're not paying any interest, well, if you did your interest rate per turn, it would be extremely low. Real mortgages don't work that way. Uh, a real mortgage. You've got uh, obviously monthly payments. Uh, you've got points that the broker will charge you to originate the loan, or the bank will charge you to originate the loan. You've got, due and payable dates. So, for example, maybe it's a 5-year deal, a 5-year loan, and it's all due and payable in 5 years. And you've got 3% that you have to pay on origination, and you've got monthly payments from now until year 5. Those are all things that Monopoly doesn't have. Um, and so, unfortunately, just like Monopoly, it's really hard to cash flow in real estate, especially right now. I've talked about it before, but um, most deals don't make sense. You're borrowing 6% from the bank, so you can make 6.5%. Um, at least that's how it is in Southern California. I know other parts of the country are different margins or higher cash returns, but 50 basis point spread is a thin margin. Uh, some clients that I have are purely opportunistic buyers. They'll only buy a couple of deals or maybe one deal a year. They're in touch with all the brokers. They know all the brokers. They know the market. They're in it, but they mostly don't buy unless it's an amazing deal, like rock star deal. Um, Another client that is very opportunistic. He purely goes after distressed assets, bankruptcies, foreclosures, that kind of thing. Really complicated environmental. Again, that's whale hunting. That's just going after home runs. But most people in the business, that's not what it's about. Most people, it's buying a great property or a great location, having great cash flow, and making sure that you can pay the mortgage and you can carry it, even if something goes sideways or the tenant has a problem. Unless you have a business that pays you 200 dollars per turn per time you pass go, or a bankroll starting out if your parents are rich. Um, it takes a lifetime to save enough money to buy a real deal. So where in Monopoly, you're trying to get a strategic monopoly over a section of the board or owning all the right colors. In real life, you need to focus on yield and cash flow. The guy who wins Monopoly usually survives the middle of the game with like boring rent, not by hitting a jackpot. Chance doesn't have any real jackpots. Um, but the reason I really love Monopoly and uh, probably why I'm such a terror with it is the real game in Monopoly is not on the board. It's not with the dice. It's with the other players. Um, my house rules are anything goes as far as trading and side deals. I gave my dad all my utilities and railroads so he could complete his monopoly for both those in exchange for some cash and a lifetime of free rent if I landed on any of his spaces. Uh, didn't win any points with my mom or my girlfriend, but um, it was a great deal. And Monopoly destroys relationships, but you can't win without them. Uh, Same goes for real estate. Real estate is a relationship business. Real estate is relationship business. Everybody knows that. But you need to see beyond the board. How can you solve real world problems, other people's problems, and win? It's about trading, swapping, negotiating, selling, buying, all of that. So, as a broker, a turning point in the business for me was early on learning how to negotiate deals and trading without thinking about the money or the commissions. I knew how to negotiate before I came into this business. One of the ways I had a couple businesses that I started when I was living in South America. One of them was a leather company. And the other was I was buying classic cars in Colombia. And shipping them to the U.S. to sell them. And I was buying all kinds of Land Cruisers, pretty much just Land Cruisers. And we'd bring them to Galveston, Texas. And then sometimes I'd bring machinery or like excess auction equipment or something back to Colombia. But that was a business of, and I knew before that, but I really learned there, especially doing it in another language, that negotiating and buying, selling, trading, that is the business. I didn't learn much about money or commissions from that. I mean, every deal mattered. When you're living hand to mouth, it's hard to separate yourself from the money. But in this business, as a broker, the next level for me was coming to understand that just playing the game to play it and understanding and exercising that muscle is probably the single most important trick to the trade. So it isn't about the dice. It's not about playing the game within, or I'm sorry, it is about playing the game within the game, about doing good business. That's how you win. And, I fucking love that game. I really love all games though. Dominoes, poker, rummy. A lot of brokers are college athletes or sports guys. Nobody has accused me of being either of those, but I'm still extremely competitive. And it's fun to play. I always try to incorporate play into work. I joke around. I have nicknames for a lot of people. It makes work more fun. And I think it's also good for business. People can feel when you hate your job or you're just not having fun. When you're cold calling and it's just rejection after rejection after rejection, if you don't find a way to have fun with that or make a game of it, they'll smell it, they'll sense it, they'll feel it, and nobody's going to want to talk to you and deals won't come your way. So a lot of these things are kind of cycles that play into each other. But you have to set aside what you're going to gain from each interaction and just play the game. As a broker, you need to transact to get paid, but nobody does this job for $100,000 a year or because they want to be a broker for the rest of their life. You have to be objective. You have to be able to give great advice, going back to the previous conversation about being an advisor. To do that, you have to pull yourself out of the deal. You have to be able to be neutral. Sometimes you have to encourage your client to walk away from certain deals, even if it means you end up losing the deal or the listing, because that's what it takes to build relationships and a reputation. I frequently give clients bad news and don't recommend deals. And obviously I've talked about how I don't recommend selling a lot of times. Those are all things that you have to do, because if you're the person who's just constantly selling, and you're always worried about the transaction, and even if you're a people's person, there's a lot of charismatic people out there, a lot of charismatic brokers, but who are not great businessmen, that don't think about the bigger business, whether that's the business of real estate, the business of brokerage, the bigger business of that relationship. They get caught up on this one deal, this one transaction. And it's hard to build a relationship and a reputation when everything is transactional and every deal is transactional, and you're willing to kind of burn people for money every time. You have to be able to separate yourself also from your just a mental state. It's hard to stay in that mindset, a good mindset, when you're too emotionally attached to every deal. Deals blow up all the time for a million reasons. So whether it's commercial real estate or just regular business, people have a way of self-sorting. The people that are just transactional, that will do anything to close a deal, to sell a building, those people burn out or burn others, and they get sorted out of the business. You have to play the game and love the game to master it.